So welcome everybody to this latest video 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the AQA GCSE Maths paper of June 22, higher paper 2, which is a calculated paper. Now as always I'll include a question breakdown in the description below so you can see which questions refer to which topic. So let's get started on this paper 2. So looking at question 1, it says circle the fraction that is equal to 1.25%. Now with this, what you want to try and do is be able to convert this into a decimal. So this as a decimal equivalent is going to be 0.0125, and then we can then convert this into each of these. So you can then do 1 over 8, which is 0.125. We've got 1 over 25, which is going to be, if I just work that out, and we've got 0, and then carry the 1 over, 0 again, carry the 1 over, the 10 over, sorry, and that becomes 4, so that's 0.04. 1 over 80, and we get 0, carry the 1, 0, carry the 10, and that then becomes 1, remainder 2. How many 80s go into 200? That's going to be 2, remainder 4, and then we've got 5, and hey bingo, we've got our correct answer. Alternatively, what you could have done is you could have written it as a fraction, so we could have had 1.25 over 100, and then if we write 1.25 as a fraction, so we get 1 1/4, which is 5 over 4, we have that over 100. Now if I take this out, it's going to look rather messy, but that's what I'm looking with, and then that then becomes, flip the second fraction, turns to a times, so that becomes 5 over 400, and then it's just a case of simplifying, in which I get 1 over 80, and there is my final answer. Moving on to question 2, it says circle the expression that means the probability of A and not B. Well, A and then not B is just B with a dash, so we're looking for this, and this is our fourth option. Question 3 then says circle the triangle number. So if you're not sure about how triangle numbers are created, so that's going to be our first one. This is our second. Our third one is just adding on the previous term. So then the fourth one is going to be look like this, in which we've got 1, 3, 6, 10, and then 15, and so it's going to be our third option. Moving on to question 4, it says circle the inequality represented by the diagram, and the correct one you should have circled is the one with 5 and 1, where it's not underlined at 5 but it is underlined at 1, so it's going to be our second option. Moving on to question 5, it says solve this equation. So the first thing you want to do for 3 marks, which is rather generous, is you want to expand the bracket. So we've got 10x minus 5 equals 6x plus 9. Then we move the x's all onto one side, so we end up with taking away 6x, take away 6x, so we end up with 4x minus 5 equals 9. Take the 5 over by adding 5, so we end up with 4x equals 14, and then divide by 4, so we end up with x equals 14 over 4, or 7 over 2, or 3.5, whichever floats your boat will be fine. Moving on to question 6, it says show that 2125 can be written as a cube number multiplied by a prime number between 10 and 20. Well, if we start off by looking at this, so let's just write down all the prime numbers between 10 and 20. So we've got 11, we've got 13, we've got 17, and we've got 19. Now from this, what we then want to do is just divide 2125 on our calculators by each of those numbers, and see which one gives us a cube number that we recognize. So 2125 divided by 11 doesn't give me a nice number, so it's not going to be that one. 2125 divided by 13 doesn't give me a nice number. Then 2125 divided by 17, that gives me a nice number, that's 125. Is 125 a cube number? Yes it is. So it's going to be 17 multiplied by 125 equals 2125, and there is my answer. Moving on to question 7, it says Sam types a constant number of words per minute it takes 8 minutes to type a report of 416 words. How long does it take for him to type an essay consisting of 1,534 words? And give your answer in times of minutes and seconds. So for this, let's have a look first of all how many words he types in 1 minute. So we do 416 divided by 8, and we do that on our calculator. 416 divided by 8, and that comes up to 52 words per minute. So then we want to see how many minutes are we going to then have. So we do 1534 divided by 52, and 1534 divided by 52 equals, and it's 29.5 minutes. And then convert that into minutes and seconds. Well, it's going to be 29 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, alternately, what you could have done is on your calculator, if I just load it up now, you can use the time feature to help you convert it for you. So if I do the first one, which is 0, then press that because it's hours, then I do my minutes of 29.5, then do the seconds, and then just finish it off like so, press equals, and it will tell me what it is in minutes and seconds. So it's 29 minutes and 30 seconds. So then moving on to question 8, it says that a school play takes place each day from Monday to Friday. Here are the attendances of 4 of the days. For all 5 days, the mean attendance is 90. Work out the attendance of Friday. So from this, what we then know is we know that if I just write down Friday, and let's just call that X. So we know that if I add up all of those numbers, so 72 plus 83 plus 88 plus 97 plus X, I divide that by 5, and that equals 90. So then if I add up all of these numbers here, I get 72 plus 83 plus 88 plus 97 comes up to 340. So I get 340 plus X. And if I take the 5 over by multiplying by 5, I get 450. And then all I've then got to do is then do 450 take away 340, which leaves me with an answer of 110. Moving on to question 9, it says Rosie makes some phone calls to sell broadband. Today she made 120 calls. The table shows the results. Write down the relative frequency that a call was not answered. So for relative frequency, it's all about using experimental probability. So how many of the calls were not answered? Well, it's going to be 33. How many were done in total? 120. And I can just type that fraction into my calculator to see if it simplifies, and it does. So the answer then is 11 over 40. Moving on to question 9b, it says during the rest of the week Rosie makes 500 calls. Using the results in the table, how many sales does she expect to make during the rest of the week? So here we're looking at answered and sell made, and that's going to be 6. So it's going to be 6 out of 120 multiplied by 500. So if I just type that all into my calculator, multiplied by 500, I get an answer of 25. Moving on to question 10, it says Harry and Ellie each bought a printer and a hard drive. Here is some information about how much they paid. And Ellie then says, in total, I paid more than Harry because 20% is greater than 10%. Is she correct? Tick a box, and we've got to support our calculation. So for this, what you want to do is don't go straight into ticking a box. Work it out first and then tick the appropriate box. So let's first of all look at how much Harry spent. So Harry spent, and it was £80 plus £25, which is £105. Then in terms of what Ellie spent, well, for the printer, I'm taking 10% off, so that's going to be 80 times 0.9 plus, now if they're paying 20% more than for the hard drive, that's going to be 25 times 1.2. And if I type that all into my calculator, so 80 times 0.9 is 72 plus 25 times 1.2, which is 30. And so Ellie pays a total of £102. So in total, she paid more. She actually didn't, so the answer is no. Moving on to question 11, it says the shape is made by joining a right angle triangle to a rectangle. Work out the area of the shape. So for this, what I've got to do, I've got triangle and a rectangle. Now for the area of the triangle, all I've got to do is just know that I've got the base and the height. So again, if I just draw that out like so, we've got a base of 30 and a height of 16. So that's going to be 16 times 30 divided by 2. And I type that into my calculator, divided by 2, and that comes up to 240. Then to work out the area of the rectangle, well, I need to know what this length here is. So if I just take that triangle out and just call that x, then this is 16 and this is 30. So I then need to use Pythagoras to work out what the width of that rectangle is going to be. So x squared equals 16 squared plus 30 squared. 16 squared plus 30 squared gives me 1156. And so to work out x, I square root that number and I get 34. So then to work out the area of the rectangle, it's going to be 52 times 34, which is 1768. So then the total area is going to be 240 plus 1768, and that gives me an answer of 2008, and that's in centimetre squared. Then moving on to question 12, it says 4y equals 5x. Which statement is true? So here in the first two statements, well, if we make y the subject, so then I get y equals 5x over 4, which is y equals 1.25 of x, and that's going to mean that y is 125% of x. So the box I need to tick then is our second option. Moving on to question 13, it says outside a cafe there is a large plastic ice cream cornet. The cornet is a hemisphere on top of a cone. The cone and the hemisphere each have a radius of 24 centimeters, and the cone has a perpendicular height of 117 centimeters. I've got my two formulas, and the question is asking me to work out the total volume of the cornet. So if I first of all just take one of those first, so let's work out the volume of the cone. So again, using this bit of information, we've got a third times pi times 24 squared times 117. So if I type that all into my calculator, so I got third multiplied by pi multiplied by 24 squared multiplied by 117, and I get an answer. I'm going to leave it in terms of pi for now, so I get 2246 pi. Then work out the volume of the hemisphere. Now just make extra care that you have been given the formula for the hemisphere, not sphere, so I don't need to divide by 2. So that's just going to be 2/3 times pi times 24 cubed. So I just type that into my calculator and I get an answer of 9216 pi. So then the total volume is going to be 22464 pi plus 9216 pi, and if I add that together, I get an answer in terms of pi of 31680 pi, or as a decimal it's 99525.65527, and then just round up your answer, but either of those will be fine, and remember that units are centimetre cubed. Then moving on to question B, it says that the actual cornets at the cafe are similar to the plastic ones. For the actual cornets, the cone and the hemisphere each have a radius of 2 centimeters. How many times greater is the volume of the plastic cornet to the actual cornet? So for this, what we want to recognize is that the length scale factor, because as the shapes are similar, goes from 2 to 24. So that means that the scale factor is going to be 12. So therefore then, that means that the volume scale factor is going to be 12 cubed. And if I type that into my calculator, 12 cubed, and that gives me an answer of 1728. So that the plastic cornet volume is going to be 1728 times bigger than the volume of the actual cornet. Moving on to question 14, it says that a survey was held in a football stadium. A sample of the crowd was asked about the importance of a family area. The pie chart represents the answers, and the question is asking us in the total number of people in the crowd was 29,250. Estimate how many people in the crowd think that the family area is very important. Assume that the sample is representative of the crowd. So for this, let's first of all, what we want to do is work out what the total sampled people were. So the total sample size. And we do that by adding all of these three numbers up. So it's going to be 375 plus 400 plus 1475. And if I just work that out all on my calculator, so 375 plus 400 plus 1475 comes up to a total of 2250. So from this, we're looking for very important, so it's looking at this, so it's going to be 1475 over 2250, so we work out the proportion, and we want to multiply that by the total population size. So if I enter all of that on my calculator, so 1475 over 2250 multiplied by 29250, press equals, and I get an answer of 19,175. So moving on to 14b, it says in fact 50% of the sample were sitting in the family area and 10% of the crowd were sitting in the family area. What is this likely to mean about the actual number of people in the crowd who think that the family area is very important? Well, the correct box you should tick for this one is that it's going to be lower than the answer in part A, because we're going to have a smaller proportion. Then moving on to question 15, it says in the grid the product of each row, column and diagonal is 1, and we need to complete the grid. So for this, what you want to do is you want to multiply the two boxes that you know and then divide the answer from 1. So if I look at show you this one here, I know these two boxes here, so if I do a quarter times 4 and then divide the answer from 1, and I should get what that missing box is going to be. So a quarter times 4 is going to be 1, and then what times by 1 gives you 1? Well, it's going to be a 1. Then moving on to the next box that we can then fill in, which is going to be this box here. So I'm going to do 1 divided by, and then if you put it in brackets, 1 times 1/8, in which I get an answer of 8. Then the third one I can fill in is this box here, so I do 1 divided by 8 times a quarter, and that equals a half. I can then work out what this box here is going to be, so I do 1 divided by a half times an eighth. You might find it's easier to do without a calculator, but there you go. So 16. I can then work out what this one here is going to be, and that's going to be 1/16. And the final box to fill in, so I do 1 divided by, and then the two boxes I know multiplied together, so it's going to be 8 times 1/16, and press equals, and I get an answer of 2. So moving on to question 16, it says Amal owns a sandwich shop. The shop is open from Monday to Saturday. In June, Amal sold 3,000 sandwiches. Amal wants to work out the mean number of sandwiches he sold per day in June. His method is 3,000 divided by 30 equals 100. Make one criticism about Amal's method. Well, the problem is that we're not looking at the whole week, so we're looking at 6 days. and he's obviously clearly used every single day in June. So basically it should be something along the lines of that he has used all days in June when his shop is shut on Sundays, or that it should be divided by 26, not 30, because it doesn't excludes Sundays. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine for that one single mark. For question 16b, it says Amal received 6,660 from selling the 3,000 sandwiches in June. The numbers of the sandwiches sold were in the ratio of meat to cheese to vegan, in the ratio of 9 to 4 to 7. The price of the meat sandwich was £2.39. The price of a cheese sandwich was £1.89. Work out the price of the vegan sandwich, and it's worth 4 marks. So the first thing we need to do is, first of all, see how many of each of the sandwiches that he then sold. So we've got a total of 3,000, and here is our ratio. So if I do 9 plus 4 plus 7, that's going to equal 1320. So then we do 3,000 divided by 20, and that equals 150. So then from 9 to 4 to 7, so I've got M, C and V. We then want to work out how many sandwiches he sold of each of those types. So 9 times 150 is 1350. 4 times 150 is 600. And 7 times 150 is 1050. So these were how many sandwiches of each category he then sold. So now what I need to do is work out how much money was made from each selling of those two that I know. So from the meat sandwiches, so the meat income, we'll call it, it's going to be 1350 multiplied by 2.39. So 350 multiplied by 2.39 gives me an answer of £3,226.50. From the cheese income, it's 600 multiplied by 1.89. So 600 times 1.89 equals 1134. So that means then that the vegan income is going to be 6660 minus the two amounts that we know. Like so, I don't know why I put a random decimal point there, so we'll just pretend that didn't happen. Minus 3226.5 minus 1134, and we get a total income of £2,299.50. Now we know that they sold 1,050 vegan sandwiches, so if we divide that by 1050, we get a final price of £2.19. So then moving on to question 17, it says here is a plan of a solid, circle the solid that it could be. So here we've got a sphere, so let me just draw that sphere. We've got a cone, we've got a hemisphere, and we've got a cylinder. Now the plan view is what it looks like from the top. So which of those would look like a rectangle? It's going to be the cylinder. Then for question 18, it says solve, and then we've got x squared plus 7x minus 11 equals 0. It says give your answer as decimals. Now, because it says something to do with rounding, I'm going to use the quadratic formula straight away. So make sure it's equal to 0. A equals 1, B equals 7, C equals minus 11. So then substituting the numbers into the quadratic formula. So I end up with minus 7 plus minus 7 squared minus, and then it's 4 times A times C, and then all divided by 2 times A. And so typing that into my calculator, I should have two values that read, and let's plug that in now. And I should have two values, one of which is 1.32, and the next one is minus 8.32, and they're both to 2 decimal places. So then moving on to question 19, it says A, B, C, D and E are points on a straight line. A, B, C, D are equally spaced, and A to D to D to E is in the ratio of 2 to 1. And the question is asking us to work out the coordinates of E. So the first thing we need to do is first of all work out what the coordinates of C and D are going to be. So if I just imagine that I'm drawing these little triangles to get from one point to another, that each of these triangles are going to be the same going down as they are going across. So looking at the difference in the x coordinates of A and B, well, there's a difference of 6, so I'm going 6 across. So then 6 across from 11 is going to be 17, and then another 6 is going to be 23. Then looking at the y ordinates, well, that's going down by 4, so that's going to be 4, 4 and 4. So if I then do 22 take away 4, which is 18, and 18 take away 4, which is 14. So the coordinates of D are 23, 14. So then if I then draw an even bigger triangle, go from A to D and work out the difference between there, well, I've got 4, 4 and 4, so that's going to go down 12. And 3 lots of 6 is 18. Now this little purple triangle is twice the size of this little blue triangle. So if I halve the two dimensions, so that's going to be half of 12 is 6 and half of 18 is 9. I then, for the x ordinate of E, I need to take away 6, so that's going to be 14 take away 6, which is 8, and I then need to add 9 to 23, so that becomes 32 and 8, and there is my coordinates of E. So moving on to question 20, it says the company makes and sells boxes of washing powder. The company wants to increase the amount of money it receives per kilogram of powder. To get the required increase, it can either increase the price to £5.88 or reduce the mass of powder in the box by X%, and we want to give X to 2 decimal places. So for this, what we want to do is we want to work out the price per kilogram from the increase. So the new price is £5.88, and we want to divide that by the weight, which is 1.68. So if I do 5.88 divided by 1.68, and that gives me 3.5. So I want 3.5 per kilogram. Now if I'm going to keep the price, so I keep the price there, so £5.60. So I've got £5.60 divided by the new weight, which I don't know, so let's just call that W, but I want that to equal 3.5. So then to work out W, it's going to be 5.6 divided by 3.5. So W then equals 5.6 divided by 3.5, which is 1.6. So W equals 1.6. So it's going to be, the new weight is going to be 1.6 kilograms. Now the question is asking me to work out what the percentage change is going to be. So it's going to be 1.68 minus 1.6 divided by the original weight, which is 1.68, and I'm going to multiply that by 100. So 1.68 minus 1.6 divided by 1.68 multiplied by 100, and I get an answer of 4.76%, and that's to 2 decimal places. Moving on to question 21, it says which of these equations is the equation of a circle? So we're looking for x squared and a y squared equals a number, so it's going to be our second option. Question 22 says circle the reciprocal of 8 to the power of 5. Well, reciprocal is going to give me this. So then that converted using indices, 8 to the power of minus 5, which is our first option. Then for question 23, it says factorize. So again, some of you may be able to do this in your head, but I'm going to go for the magic number way. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to give you minus 36, but added together give you minus 16. So we're looking at 8 and 2, that doesn't work. We're looking at 4 and 4, that doesn't work. We're looking for 12 and 3, that doesn't work. We're looking for 9 and 4, so let's just do 36. So we're looking for 1 and 36, 2 and 18, I think there is our winner. So we've got 2 and 18. Then we've just got to decide which one's the negative. Well, it's going to be minus 18 and positive 2. So I've got 3x squared minus 18x plus 2x minus 12. Then factorising the pairs, I get 3x, and I've got x minus 6. And then we've got 2x minus 6. So our two brackets are going to be 3x plus 2 and x minus 6. Moving on to question 24, it says the straight line is perpendicular to the straight line through 2, 8 and 6, 15 and passes through 0, 9 and x, 17. And the question is asking us to work out the value of x. So the first thing we need to do is to work out the gradient of these 2 points here. So the gradient of those 2 points, so I'm going to do 8 and 2 and 15 and 6. And I take those 2 away. So 8 take away 15 is going to give me minus 7. And 2 take away 6 is minus 4. So that gives me 7 over 4. Then if it's perpendicular, that means that the gradient, or m, is going to equal minus 4 over 7 because it's a negative reciprocal. Now, the next thing I've then got to do is then work out what the equation of the line is. So I've got my coordinate, and I'm going to use y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. So using this coordinate, I get y minus 9 equals minus 4 over 7 x minus 0. Then from this, I can then simplify or just expand the brackets. So I get minus 7 over 4x. And then the equation of the line is y equals minus 4 over 7x plus 9. So then what I've then got to do is then use the coordinate of x17. So then using y equals 17, I substitute that in. So I've got 17 equals minus 4 over 7 x plus 9. Well, I take the 9 over by taking away 9. So that leaves me with 8 equals minus 4 over 7x. So then 8 divided by minus 4 over 7 equals x. And if I type that all into my calculator, now again, your way of doing this might be completely different, but you may still get the same answer, and that will be absolutely fine. And press equals, and I get x equals minus 14. Then moving on to question 25, it says f of x equals 2x plus 5. Show that 3f of x minus 12 and the inverse function of x simplifies to give me an integer. So for this, what we need to first of all do is work out what the inverse function is going to be. So if I show by doing that, so I make it equal to y, and then what I then want to do is I want to make x the subject. So I take y minus 5 equals 2x, so y minus 5 over 2 equals x. So then the inverse function of x is going to be x minus 5 over 2. So then using this and using this, what we then need to do is work out what this is going to be. So it's 3 lots of f of x, which is 2x plus 5, minus 12 lots of the inverse function, which is x minus 5 over 2. So then expanding the brackets out and simplifying, well, 3 times 2x is 6x, 3 times 5 is 15, minus, and then we've got 12x plus 60, all divided by 2. So that gives me 6x plus 15 minus 6x plus 30. The 6x's cancel, so I just end up with 45, and that is an integer, and there is my final answer. Then moving on to question 26, it says two objects J and K are applying pressure to areas of the ground. For J, the force is 18.9 newtons and the area is 0.45 meters squared. And the pressure for J to the pressure of K is in the ratio of 7 to 8, and the area of J to the area of K is 9 to 5. Work out the force of K. So the first thing we need to do is to work out the pressure of K. So the pressure of J rather is going to be using this formula, is going to be 18.9 divided by 0.45. And so if I type that all into my calculator, 18.9 divided by 0.45 gives me an answer of 42. So then from this is the pressure of J. So then using this ratio, that this equals 7 parts. So then to work out 8 parts, I do 42 divided by 7 multiplied by 8 and I get 48. So it's 48 and the pressure is going to be in newtons to meter squared, and that's the pressure of K. So the next thing for me then to do is to work out the area. So the area of K, well, the area of J is 0.45 and this represents 9 parts. So then 0.45 divided by 9 gives me 1 part, multiply that by 5 and I get a quarter. So then 0.25 equals 5 parts, and this is the area of K. So then what I've then got to do is use these two values here as the formula. So we know that the pressure is equal to F over A. This is my P value. This is my A value. So I've got 48 equals F, which is what I'm wanting to know, and I've got 0.25. So I times by 0.25. So F equals 48 multiplied by 0.25. And that gives me an answer of 12, and that is in newtons. Then moving on to question 27, it says to be rented, a bedroom must have a floor area of at least 6.51 square meters. A bedroom has a rectangular floor. The floor measures 2.4 by 2.9. Correct to 2 significant figures. Show that the bedroom can be rented. So first of all, let's have a look at some dimensions. So what you want to do is, if I look at the 2.4, so to 2 significant figures, that's been rounded up to the nearest point. So it's going to be 0.35 to 2.45. And the other dimension is going to be 2.85 by 2.95. Now, what I want to do is I want to pick any of the numbers in between these values and show that it's greater than 6.51. So I just pick any number. So if I go for, let's just pick one, let's go for 2.42 multiplied by let's go for 92. So 2.42 times by 2.92 gives me an answer of 7.0664. So as 7.0664 is greater than 6.51, the room can be rented. And again, you could have picked any two numbers within these ranges, and as long as the answer was greater than 6.51, you'd be fine to get all 3 marks. Then moving on to question 28, it says AB, BC and CD are sides of a regular 12-sided polygon. CDMN is a square. Prove that A, B and N lie on a straight line. So we want to show that this point here, and this point here are on a straight line. Now, if it's on a straight line, so if A, B, N is on a straight line. Well, we know AB is a straight line, but we need to then work out BN. So then the angle of ABN is going to equal 180 degrees. So let's go about trying to work out what angle that is going to be. So to work out this angle here, well, we know that that's going to be an interior angle of a 12-sided shape. So to work out the size of that angle, we do 180, the number of sides, take away 2, divided by the total number of sides. So that's going to be 180 times 10 divided by 12, and that equals 150. Now, from then, what I can then do is I can then work out what this angle here is going to be. That's 150. As this is a square, that's going to be 90 degrees. And so from this, we can then work out what angle this is going to be. So I'll just colour that, because we know that angles around a point add up to 360. So 360, take away 150, take away 90. Leaves me with 120. So this angle here is 120. Let me just draw that triangle out again. So that's 120. Now we know that this side is going to be the same as that side, because the side of the 12-sided polygon is the same as the square, because we know that from DC. So that means that this triangle here must be a isosceles triangle. So I can then work out what this angle here is going to be. So it's going to be 180, take away 120 divided by 2, so it equals 30. So then if ABC is 150 degrees and CBN is 30 degrees and that ABN equals ABC plus CBN. So then what we've got is 150 plus 30 equals 180 degrees. So therefore ABN lie on a straight line. And there is our final answer. Now, one thing we couldn't do is just assume that this angle here is 180. I need to use the parts of the other shape to know, because that's what I'm being asked to prove. I can't work backwards in these questions. So I need to find a way to prove that things are on a straight line. And you can do that by showing that the angles between the points are going to be 180 degrees. So looking at question 29, which is our last question, it says the equation of the curve is y equals x squared minus 18x plus 70. By completing the square, work out the coordinates of the turning point. So for this, what we need to do is factorize this in the form of x plus a squared plus b. And our turning point, when we've got it in this format, is going to be minus a b. So it's the value of the bracket that makes x equal to 0. And we can go from there. So looking at this, what we end up with is we divide. So if I just write down the equation, I don't know why I've wrote plus there. So we've got plus 18x plus 17. I've done it again, so let me just change that to a minus. There we go. And so looking at our bracket, we divide this value by 2, so it becomes minus 9 squared. We continue the 70, but we take away whatever bracket number is inside the bracket squared. So we take away 81, leaving me with x minus 9 squared minus 11. So therefore, that minus 9, minus a, if a equals 9, minus a is going to be positive 9. And our number at the end is minus 11. And there is my final coordinate and the last question of this paper.